All right. I hold in my hands, as do you, the press release from Claudia Tenney and a new logo for her here. It's Claudia for Congress. We can ask her all about it right now on the Talk of the Town. Ms. Tenney, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Good morning.
Congratulations on your announcement today down in Binghamton and making various stops throughout the state, culminating in your stop back here in Utica later this afternoon, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Put miles on the old vehicle, huh, Claudia?
I put a lot of miles on my vehicle anyway. By the way, the Congressional District's about half the distance of my Assembly District. So
you do have
believe it or if you can imagine, I have 134,000 people in my Assembly District, which starts in New Hartford and ends in Montgomery. And I don't mean the neighboring county. I mean Montgomery and Orange County, where people commute to New York City. So Binghamton's just maybe an hour and 45 minutes from my house. It's a lot closer.
Back at Union Station this afternoon for the folks here in the Mohawk Valley to get the details on your announcement for the campaign for a congressional seat. Before we talk a lot about that, first of all, we haven't spoken to you following the horrible attacks in Paris, France. We've talked to a number of experts. What are your feelings now that you've had a few days to digest this?
Yeah, well, it's a tragedy, obviously. It's a murder of innocent people and more of this extreme Islamic terrorism. And we need to stand strong. We need America to be strong. We need to protect our allies. France is one of our oldest and most important allies, and this is unforgettable. What's happening here? It's of epic proportions, and I think that they have a plan to continue to spread. I noticed it was a Serbian newspaper, and that detected that this guy crossed over into Greece. He was an imposter trying to portray himself as an innocent. They rescued him, and he ends up slaughtering people in Paris, which is a complete disaster for the world.
Well, and
my heart goes out to the people of Paris. They're a beautiful city, wonderful people.
Sure. With regard to people getting into our country in the questionable fashion that you just mentioned there, we have a poll question running today, started yesterday, about our borders and what we should do about the borders. I know a bunch of states of the Union have already closed borders. We're asking folks to chime in on our poll question whether you think that we should continue to open our borders to immigrants and refugees or close it down completely. What do you think? Or somewhere in between?
Right. Well, first of all, we need to secure our borders as a nation. We are a sovereign nation. We need to secure our borders. We need to be sure that we keep the people who are here safe. I support legal immigration and people coming through this country who are interested in being Americans and assimilating into our way of life. Though we respect numerous nationalities and our differences and cultures, we're known for that now in Utica. We're known for our refugee population and for our reverence and our celebration of different nationalities and different people. But we have to be sure the people coming here are here for the American dream, like our parents and our grandparents were and our ancestors. You have to be here to be part of the American culture, to be embracing freedom and embracing individual rights, which are embedded in our Constitution. Not people are coming here to harm us or using fraudulent means to come in and kill innocent people. So my concern, and I know there's a big discussion about the Syrian refugees, and I'll jump right in, is I attended an event recently that was held by the Syrian Orthodox Church in Utica, and they were very concerned about the persecution of Christians in Syria, which is a serious problem. What we need to do is find out whether our State Department is going to determine, what the status of these people are. But until we have a credible and viable way of detecting who these people are and letting them into our country, we can't let that happen. And so what we can do right now, and what I suggest, is let's find safety somewhere in Syria or in another country to support these refugees, or what they're not actually declared as refugees yet. Support them with food, the necessaries of life, whatever we can do to keep them until we can properly vet these people. We don't want to bring more dangerous people into this country, and I think we have to be very careful about doing that. And that's the lesson of what we learned in Paris, is that open borders without any credible vetting of people is going to be dangerous for our American citizens.
President Barack Obama making comments at the G20 summit yesterday. We'll have to play a little clip about his capsule summation of what happened in Paris, France. And here it is if you'd listen and check it out.
Sure. Thank you.
We have always understood that this would be a long-term campaign. There will be setbacks and there will be successes. The terrible events in Paris were obviously a terrible and sickening setback.
This was a characterization that has rankled some folks here, the idea of it being a setback. What's your comment on that?
That's typical of Barack Obama. It's just a setback. We are under attack by not the people of, the moderate Muslims. We're under attack by radical Islamic jihadists. Those are the people that are trying to kill us. And until we recognize and identify that enemy, we're going to continue to kid ourselves and put our families at risk until we define who our enemy is and eliminate the enemy and protect our borders from these people coming in and spreading this kind of terrorism in our country. And I think we have to be careful of that. I just don't agree with the president on that.
Talking to Claudia Tenney, her announcement for her campaign for a congressional seat coming this morning here on the Talk of the Town at 100.7 FM WUTQ.
Yeah, Claudia, interesting here receiving your press release and something I've brought up before. Your press help there. Her first name is Hanna as well.
With an H, Hanna with an H.
We joke about that. And
I know, it's funny. People will say, I said, Hanna and I are going down to the store, and they're like, oh, Richard Hanna? I said, no, Hanna with an H.
Right.
Hanna with an H.
Right.
And at the beginning line here, you're saying, it says, Tenney will be challenging liberal Richard Hanna in the June 2016 GOP primary. Interesting choice of words.
Right. Well, he always tries to say he's a moderate. Define moderate for me. I think that he's registered Republican, but he votes with people who define themselves as liberal, and he has a very liberal voting record. Under all credible conservative rating agencies, national agencies from Conservative Review, American Conservative Union, Freedom Works, you name, and many of these don't rate social issues. They purely rate your fiscal voting record in Congress. He is an F. That means he's nowhere near a conservative. He's an F. He's in the 40s, and maybe a 50. And when I went to school, if you got a 40 or a 50, that was failing. That's a failing grade. Maybe with Common Core today, that's not a failing grade.
Yeah, there's another school in California that's trying to make it a not failing grade too. But that's
I hate to bring up Seinfeld, but we're all winners, right?
Right.
But anyway, that's a failing grade. He is liberal. I would define myself as a constitutional conservative. I'm common sense, and as I said in my speech today, what we need to do is realign ourselves to understand what the role of each branch of government is. The federal government has a role, the state government has a role, and the local governments have a role. The problem with our country today is the federal government has grown so large and so bloated through executive agencies and many other agencies that they're suffocating our rights and our freedoms that are guaranteed to us under the Bill of Rights and under the Constitution. And we need to preserve those. We need to get the federal government off our backs and out of our life. We need to empower the individuals, the people in our society, as envisioned by our founders. And there's nothing wrong with talking about the Constitution. We all, as elected officials, police officers, first responders, military personnel, every one of us takes an oath to uphold our Constitution, and we need to do that first and foremost. And there's nothing crazy about it. There's nothing extreme about it. It's not even conservative. The Constitution of the United States is one of the most revered documents in the world. And not only that, it's known as one of the most liberal documents in the world because the most important aspect of our Constitution that's unlike any other country in the world is freedom, and we value individual rights. And that's what I stand for. And that's really what the oath, what the oath is that we take. And I'm just trying to restore those rights and restore our freedom to everyone in our society based on this framework.
And you're highlighting yourself as someone with the energy and the backbone, if you will, in your press release to say no to the Washington elite to defend our Constitution. Is there some specific points that you would like to highlight as far as the congressman not doing those jobs?
Well, the congressman went to Washington, and he said, I'm going to stand up to all these things. By the way, Richard Hanna campaigned with me in 2010. We went to maybe 10, 15 Tea Party rallies together. The Tea Party was behind Richard Hanna 100% and ushered him into office. People get scared when they hear the name Tea Party. People have said terrible things about it. The core principles of the Tea Party are tax. We're taxed enough already is what T stands for. It's less government and less taxes. Those are the core principles of the Republican Party. Those are the core principles of Reagan. That's what I support, and that's what Richard Hanna said he was going to do. He went to Congress, and as I said, he has turned himself into a big government liberal. He votes for bloated budgets. He votes to raise taxes. He votes to raise the debt ceiling. He votes for huge multi-billion-dollar federal government programs that are only going to impede on our states. He supported the so-called free trade agreement, the TPP, which will threaten American jobs and threaten our sovereignty as we do deals with countries that are going to cheat. They're not going to live up to their standards. China is going to be added probably onto this Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. He votes for all those things that violate what we stand for as Americans, as individuals, as freedom-loving people. We want government off our backs. We want the ability to live our own lives, to create jobs, to have some freedom. And when government's in the way, you have less freedom. You suffocate those rights.
And we're speaking with Republican Assemblywoman Claudia Tenney as she makes her announcement this morning to take another shot and a run for the New York's 22nd Congressional District. Claudia, you were one of the first, maybe the first, to stand up and call for the resignation of former Speaker Shelley Silver. Thoughts on what's transpiring today?
Yeah, well, isn't it interesting that I'm standing here declaring my race for Congress, talking about myself as someone who has a backbone. Look, when I called for Sheldon Silver's resignation in 2012, and I did it repeatedly until he was finally removed as Speaker, everyone that I went around Albany and people said, "Oh my God, they're going to cut your brake lines. You're crazy. This is, you just got to go along and get along." And by the way, Sheldon Silver, whether he gets convicted or not, I pray to God that he gets convicted for what he's done to the people of New York for all these 20 years, his reign of terror and not allowing great bills to come out and also prohibiting our freedom. Look at the state of New York. If, I stood up against Sheldon Silver for using our money, our taxpayer dollars, to cover up a sexual harassment claim. And this is the party of women's rights, a sexual harassment claim against staffers that he covered up using our money. And I called him out on it. And finally, and I hope justice will be done for Sheldon Silver. But at the very least, at least he's not the Speaker anymore. He's not the leader of the state party, the state Democratic Party in Albany. So I see the state Democratic delegation in Albany.
All right, Claudia, thanks for the call. Best
Thank
of
you.
luck moving forward. The website is ClaudiaForCongress.com. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.